Toxic masculinity.
History professor fired for posing a racist question.
This is great. This is great. So this is not a racist question. I just want to be clear. There's nothing racist about this question at all. And I'm just going to cut right to the chase here because we don't have time. But basically, there's this guy, and he used to be a New York City police officer. He served during 9/11. And he's talking about the history of America and the history of trading goods generally, right? The transatlantic trade routes, not slave trade specifically, but the transatlantic slave routes, transatlantic trade routes generally, encompassing all kinds of, we're obviously talking about slavery here, but we're talking about lots of different stuff. Because most of the stuff that was traded in the various, across the Atlantic Ocean, it wasn't obviously people. Most of the stuff that was traded was sugar and spices and tobacco and whatever it was, anything, whatever. All kinds of goods, and so there were obviously slaves that also came across, and slaves that produced some of the tobacco, and slaves that produced some of the sugar, and that kind of thing. And so if you take all of that together, because a lot of people like to say that, America was built on slavery. If we didn't have slaves, then you wouldn't have had the wealth that came up in the West. But it's like, how did Europe evolve before white people were even introduced to Africans? Because there was a long period of time since a little bit after the Roman era when Europeans didn't even have slaves, right? Sometime after the Roman era, slavery died out in Europe. Actually, they weren't allowed to have slaves. You couldn't enslave another European. Funnily enough, I have an ancestry. I have some documentation from my ancestors in Germany, and it says that we had a farm, and it said we had 2 servants, and then actually says next to their names, it says not a slave next to it, not a slave.
So it was paid hired worker.
They were paid hired workers, yeah.
Were they paid $15 an hour minimum wage?
That's the next question. That's the next question.
Chris?
Were my ancestors paying their servants $15 an hour? I don't know the answer to that. My guess is that because they didn't use dollars, I'm sure it was far more than the equivalent of $15 an hour. I don't know what it would have been.
I'm joking.
The Deutschmark or something like that. I don't know what it would have been in the 1400s.
1
But
cent?
anyway. Huh?
10 cents?
No, I'm saying because it wouldn't be dollars.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even think it would be Deutschmarks. I don't know what it would be, but whatever the coinage was at the time,
okay.
I'm sure it was the equivalent of more than $15 an hour. But anyway, that was a tangent that didn't need to be gone down. But anyway, the point is that did slavery exist in Europe to some degree here or there? I think maybe, yeah. But for the most part, it had died out in Europe for a long time, and Europe still thrived. It still did very well. We had technological advancements. We had all of this. And then the slaves came along, the whole slavery system. And then we had a lot of certain raw goods that were, able to be consumed in greater quantities because of the slave labor. But actually, I read somewhere, or I watched a video or something about how slavery was actually very expensive because, like, housing and feeding all your slaves, you had to keep them to some degree healthy because they had to do hard labor, So feeding all those people and housing them and keeping them somewhat healthy was actually pretty expensive. In some instances, it would have actually been cheaper just to pay them a wage and let them go find rent and buy their own food. And so... So slavery was probably going to die out. It was headed toward dying out. And then Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, and that made it a lot more feasible to have slaves because a single slave wasn't able to produce that much cotton in the early days. But then once the cotton gin was invented, a slave could produce a lot more cotton in one day, than he used to. And so the cost of the slave was now eclipsed by the amount of money that they could make you. And so that's when the slave trade really exploded in America, is because of this cotton gin, which was invented by a black guy, which is kind of a twisted irony of history. But anyway, so this guy's talking about all that history and how it's nuanced. History is nuanced, I'm sorry. It just is. And he actually asks the question. Let me get down here to the question. He forced students, he had students formulate the pros and cons concerning the topic of not actually slavery, about trading goods in general at that time, right? All the benefits and the detriment that had occurred, this sort of negativity. The exact question, hold on, I'm trying to find the exact question here. Let's see here. I should have highlighted it. Let's see here. Okay. Well, here he writes, the questions that get students to think about history from multiple perspectives and get students conversing and thinking is, I think it will impact the way teachers teach. They will avoid topics that might raise tough questions. Right, so that's not exactly what he asked, but it is an excellent point. Let's see here. Why can't I find this? Let's see. Okay. Here it is. The final slide of the presentation. So he's presenting. It is a presentation. He says the final slide of the presentation asked if the positive justify the negatives. Oh no, that was the slide. That was the slideshow that talked about how horrible he was. Let's see here. Well, this is a terrible presentation. I should have had this this up. But anyway, he's just basically talking about the nuances of trading in that era. I wish I had highlighted or cut out the bit that I wanted. Usually I don't have this much trouble finding things. But anyway, the point is, it's like you should definitely be able to ask questions about the benefits of trade generally, despite the fact that there may be historically some, problems, stuff that we see and we think this is bad or whatever. But this guy lost his job because he was just talking about history in a nuanced way, and he didn't simply create a lesson that said white people bad, black people good, slavery was horrible, moving on to the next thing. Like, he was actually trying to teach things as they happened, as opposed to this sort of caricature version that they want you to teach nowadays. And I think that this is just absolutely terrible. You need to be able to talk about these things in a... God, I hate the race stuff. I'm so unbelievably sick of the race stuff. Like, there's always just the assumption, always, oh, this person's a racist. Oh, this person didn't say that racism was purely evil and there was nothing. Look, I don't... This guy definitely did not defend racism in any way or slavery or anything like that. Okay, let me try to just read some of this. During the lecture, Taylor discussed the Columbian Exchange, the transfer of plants, animals, diseases, people, and culture following Christopher Columbus's voyage, as well as its positive and negative implications for the world. Positive and negative implications for the world. All that trade, right? Fire Council, I don't know what that means, F-I-R-E, so it's an acronym for something. Adam Goldstein told Campus Reform that the university never responded to the letter. Fire, I assume, is somebody who's defending this teacher. I don't know. The final slide of the presentation asked if the positives and justify the negatives. In response, an Instagram account called blah blah blah, whatever that is, some big radicals, claimed that Taylor was a racist predator on campus. Okay, yeah, so that is it. This is the last slide that he provided in his thing. Do the positives justify the negatives, right? Now, he didn't say that the positives justified the negatives. He asked the question, did the positives justify the negatives? You can't even ask now questions like that.
You can't even think questions like this.
You can't even think questions like that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Now, he did not try to defend slavery, but I will. And here's my defense of slavery, okay? This is not a defense of specifically the transatlantic slave trade or the slavery of black Americans, black Africans in America at the time. But this is a defense of slavery generally, right? Because you had slavery since the dawn of time. Since before recorded history, we've had slavery, right? They still have slavery in Africa today, right? We think of slavery... What?
I think Russia was the best in terms of slavery because Russians enslaved Russians.
Yeah.
We were slaves.
You enslaved yourselves, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
that's we don't need anyone.
Well, they did that throughout Europe. They did that everywhere. Africans do it to other Africans still to this day. Arabs do it to other Arabs. Asians do it to other Asians. But they outlawed. I think they outlawed Europeans enslaving other Europeans in like the 11th century or something. I don't quite remember, but fairly early on. But the Romans obviously had slaves. The Romans. But here's the thing. So why is slavery potentially a good thing conceptually? So the reason that we think of slavery as a civil rights abuse today is because our quality of life is so high, right? It's there are very few people around the world that actually have to endure the possibility of starving to death, right, or being killed by the elements for lack of shelter, right? This is very rare, especially in the Western world. It's even fairly rare in the third world or the developing nations. But if you go back historically, this is very common, right? It's very common to have a winter that wasn't good. A lot of the early colonists here in the United States, in this region that we now call the United States, died off early on because they had these terrible winters and they couldn't produce enough food. So here's a question, right? If you're going around as a hunter-gatherer, right, and your tribe is starting to starve, right, because we've had a sort of like we've had a very harsh winter or something like that. We're having trouble finding food. Maybe we're not very good at it. We're like a kind of a weaker tribe of people. We don't have that much going on in terms of our guys can't hunt. We keep throwing spears, but we're not good at making spears, man. They're not working, and we're kind of weak. For whatever reason, we haven't been able to get that much food. And our kids are dying, and our wives are dying, and a lot of the men are dying. Like, a lot of people are dying. Our tribe is in danger of going extinct. It might actually be a better solution to go be enslaved by the next tribe over. Now, that sounds horrible to us today. But if you're watching your child die, starve to death, and your wife starve to death, it might actually be a valid solution to go to a wealthier tribe of people who have more than you do, who are more capable of sustaining their lives and have a little bit of surplus, especially if you come in and help them work. It might actually be better for you to be a slave historically, right, than to die, right, than to starve to death and watch your family starve to death. So, look, I'm not saying that slavery is a good thing, especially in the modern world, but I'm like, historically, what I'm trying to say is, historically, there may have been instances in which this was mutually beneficial. This was not always merely one group oppressing another group. I think probably most of the time it was. I think probably most of the time it was one tribe conquers another tribe and enslaves most of their people against their will. I think that was probably most of the time true. But I think there were probably also instances where you could either face starvation and death because you're a weak group of people, or you could be enslaved by somebody. Now, how many of my ancestors were slaves? I don't know. I assume that at some point down the line, there are some people who were probably enslaved by some other people at some point, thousands of years ago. So, it's obviously not something that affects me emotionally in the same way that it affects somebody emotionally who could actually like trace his lineage back to a slave. Right? Of course, people will look at that and think, oh, that's horrible. But I actually think that we've done a huge disservice in our society by romanticizing the plight of the slave. We have done this. It started with the show Roots. There was this miniseries called Roots, and they depicted slavery in the worst possible way, where it was just the absolute most atrocious thing ever. And ever since then, we've always spoken about slavery as if it was the worst possible state of human condition. And possibly sometimes it was, possibly sometimes it wasn't. It's hard to say, but there's no nuance anymore. It's black and white. This is the worst thing ever. You're an evil person if you even talk about it without saying that. And it's just silly, There are intellectually, like if you think about this in an intellectual way, if you think about it rationally, there were certainly, benefits historically, maybe not in the days of the African slaves in America, but certainly at some points in ancient history there may have been some benefits of slavery for the slave as well. Look, I just hate that they're so okay. So yeah, so I'm taking the worst possible position, playing devil's advocate, trying, being a bit provocative here. But honestly, people shouldn't lose their jobs for just saying, did the benefits of of trade outweigh the sins of those doing the trading at the time? I think that's a great question to ask. I think people should weigh those things because that does force people to look at nuance. It does force people to look at things as they actually were. Force people to look at things, in a more realistic way as opposed to this caricature nonsense that we always look at everything through because of movies. I mean, it really is, I think, because of movies and TV shows that we think of the world the way we do. And that is it for the stories of the day. Valeria did not talk much. She had her own segment at the beginning there with Meghan Markle.
Yes, if you would do Meghan Markle in the end,
It
I
would-
won't
you-
spend my whole energy on the first topic.
No, I
have
liked it.
nothing left right
I
here.
think the
I
people-
see like many people. Yes, guys, I do read comments. I don't look at myself. Yes, sometimes I do, of course, but mostly I'm reading your comments and people saying that I look bored or I look introvert.
Yeah. You're
I
an
mean, I am
introvert.
introvert.
She's an introvert. She's a bit shy.
Yeah, I am. It's true, but it's just hard for me to
Yeah.
absorb so much information, and Chris talking super intellectually and smart and using smart words, and I'm just
I
like
would say
sometimes I'm losing.
I would say slightly above average.
No, you're smart. You're very smart.
Slightly above average.
So, do we want to take some questions?
I think we
'Cause
should take some questions, even though we're well over time on the
we
show
are
today.
85 minutes live.
Let's
so
do
we
it. Let's
can
take
take
some
some
questions and
questions.
comments. If you guys got anything to say about the show tonight, or if you got any questions, Valeria, how do you do your makeup?
What?
I'm not reading a question. That's just from me. That's
What
just
did you
my
say? Sorry.
Valeria, how do you do your makeup? Walk us through it.
Well, I did put some like more makeup today because my skin wasn't good this day of the month.
Her skin is perfect, ladies
So I
and
needed
gentlemen.
to
She's lying.
distract my ugliness with a little
Her-
bit more makeup.
You guys, her standard for her skin not being perfect is so ridiculous.
I have one spot here and it's super painful.
There are some women out there who would want to punch you. Your level of what you think is not looking your best. Anyway, yeah. So she did some makeup. She did her makeup nicely today. I think it looks pretty good. Do we have any? I'm not even on. Did somebody say something?
Attaco Magnet. Chris, my wife got confused between Ben Shapiro and Tim Pool because they both wear beanies, don't they?
Ben,
What?
because ben Shapiro wears his like yarmulke. That's pretty funny. Let's see. Gosh, the questions and comments are going so quick. I can't read anything. Let's see here. The Tree Climber writes, racism is overrated. Fact. I think so. I think it is overrated. I think that's great. Let's see here. There are pyramids in China and South America as well, says MK. That's true. There are pyramids. They're not quite like the Giza. It's a little bit different, but yeah, there are some kind of pyramid type things. Let's see here. DJ writes, Kate Brown got her COVID vaccine before the elderly. Kate Brown is the governor of Oregon. I actually hate talking about Kate Brown because she is so unpleasant. Kate Brown is one of the most offensive people I've ever seen speak. And also the Mayor Wheeler of Portland also. These guys are so pathetic, and I'm from Oregon, so I don't like talking about Oregon politics because it makes me depressed. Chris00NJ writes, Chris is way out of his league. Well, hold on a second. Chris from New Jersey, as I assume what your name means. I am not way out of me, and I'll tell you why. When we met, I was much skinnier and better fit. I was much more handsome. But yeah, I may be a little bit out of my league. Okay, fine. Let's see here. Oh, Kelly Higginson writes, Valeria, you are beautiful. I knew a guy named Kelly when I was a kid, but I assume this is a girl. Kelly can be either a boy's name or a girl's name. Let's see. Neil McCann says, come on, Chris. If any part of your job description includes being beaten, starved, or whipped, it ain't good. No. Look. Of course I'm playing devil's advocate. Of course I'm trying to take a provocative opinion there, position there. But, no, I don't think that it is worse being well, you say starved. I don't think so. That's the thing about being a slave. That's the only real benefit of being a slave is that they want to keep you alive because they need you to work the field. So you may get what did he say? Beaten and whipped. You may get beaten and whipped, but is it better to be beaten and whipped, or is it better to starve to death? And the whole point I'm trying to make is that historically, if you were at risk of starving to death, it might actually be in your best interest to, in fact, be a slave instead, right? They did have people who would be willingly be indentured servants, which was essentially temporary slavery.
You know that you have camera on me, right?
Oh no, I didn't realize. Sorry about that. Sorry, you were talking earlier, but I want to pretend this is all coming from you, so I don't get blamed for it.
Okay. Okay. Frank, what does Valeria think of Chris not being as fit as he used to be? Well, I'm no longer afraid that some hot girl is gonna steal him from me. So
Believe
I'm
it or
kind of
not,
like,
that is
okay,
true.
finally I can relax.
It is true. I dated a lot of girls before I met Valeria, and I would always have like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different girls that I was hanging out with. If I didn't have a girlfriend, if I had a girlfriend, it was just the one girl. But if I was single, I didn't have a girlfriend. I wasn't in a committed relationship. I would have 4 or 5 girls
You
around.
were like super hot, skinny, fit, but you were poor.
That's true.
And I
yeah.
was worried
Yeah.
somebody's gonna take you because you're hot. Now, even though you are not as fit as you used to be, you have more money, and now I guess I'm afraid that
Well, I'm not rich. I'm not like.
I said more money, didn't say rich. No,
But
we are
she is a
not.
little worried that I'll get fit, and then the combination of me being fit and as attractive as I was when I was younger,
Yes.
and having a bit of money.
And then I think I have to get a plastic surgery.
You do not need plastic surgery, guys. Tell her not to get plastic surgery. I'll tell you what. I have a weird thing. I've always had this weird thing where if I got a photo of myself, I always looked bad. It was almost impossible for me to get a good photo. And even when I was like fit and attractive, but video was always okay. I always looked pretty good on film, but I don't know what it is. I could never really look good in photos. I was like passably handsome on film, but on photos I never looked good. Kind of weird thing. Let's see.
So we didn't deserve even one super chat today.
Well, that's
90
okay. I don't mind that.
for
I
90
don't
minutes,
need super
like,
chat. I don't
we're
need
almost
super chat.
working like 2 hours. We don't get even like.
I'm kind of glad we
I'm
didn't
not-
get a super
I'm not
chat.
talking about $15 an hour, but at least like $1.99 would be good.
Well, if this gets monetized, we'll be okay. But they don't know. They usually get demonetized these
They
videos,
do.
but hopefully they'll get monetized. We don't have to worry about it.
Thoughts on
this guy-
alcohol tax increase?
This guy 800D writes butt implants only. She doesn't actually need butt implants. She's
a
got
butt
a nice.
you can get on a gym. You
Yeah.
can get a butt.
She
but
does. She does
breast
that. She does that glute workout stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and but boobs, I guess I should have a baby.
Darling, you are perfectly shaped. You do not need anything extra.
Can I pretend that I'm not perfect?
Can I pretend that I'm not perfect? You can for the people
Your
watching it.
thoughts on alcohol tax increase? DJ says, I think it's good.
Red Elgin is giving me fitness advice that I'm already following. Sorry, what? Say it again.
DJ asks, thoughts on alcohol tax increase? If there is increase, I mean, there's gonna be increase in every possible tax because they need more money. And now they paid us, they're gonna pay a stimulus check with this. Okay, thank you for returning 5% of my 25% taxes.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
stimulus.
Yeah, the stimulus check was crazy how little people actually got compared
Guys,
to how
I have
much
an
they were
advice. Get that stimulus money. Yes, thank you. Okay, I want to finish my sentence.
spending. A tree climber. Oh, tree climber writes, talk me into it. Thanks, tree climber.
I have an advice.
That's for Valeria.
Maybe it's a stupid advice, but I think it's worth it. Get that stimulus check, invest in Bitcoin.
Yeah, just put it
And
all in
just wait
Bitcoin.
five years. I think it's gonna worth like 10 grand at least.
Yeah.
Just invest in Bitcoin, forget about it. I think it's gonna do.
Yeah, just
Good.
put some money in Bitcoin.
Oh my Jewish friend just gave us $2.99. What should I do
My Jewish friend.
for her now?
Joe Sullivan gave us $5 shirts. She wants to fatten you up so you don't wander off, Chris. Joe, Joe writes that as a joke, and that's true. It's true. Back when I was skinny, she was always a little bit, a little bit insecure about it. Now she's just like, "You're fat, and the woman will have you. It is fine. I am not worried." Like if a girl ever comes to visit or wants to say how or calls me on the phone, she's like, "Yes, I don't care. She won't want you. Or fat now." It's fantastic. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, guys know what I'm talking about. Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah, Ethereum. We have money in
Ethereum.
all these.
Yeah,
We went into a little bit into Dogecoin for fun,
for fun.
but it's very volatile. Very volatile stocks are good. If you
It
can,
depends on how much drunk Elon Musk on Fridays, and when he start tweeting stuff, the Dogecoin is
we
like,
kind of got screwed actually because so Elon Musk started tweeting about Dogecoin. Let's say on a Friday. Let's just come up with a.
it's usually like
Let's say it's a
weekends.
Friday. So on one Friday he tweeted about Dogecoin, and Valeria and I were both like, "Oh, we got to put money in Dogecoin." So we put a bunch of money in Dogecoin.
Not
I
a
think
bunch.
some like $4,000 or something like that.
No. Mm-mm.
Well, we didn't have a ton invested in, but we put whatever we had that happened to be investable at the time. We put that all into Dogecoin, and then it started to go down, and we were like, "What the hell? This is weird." So we went ahead and we waited for it to come back up a little bit, and then we took it out, and we didn't really lose anything.
No,
we
we
kind of
didn't.
broke even. But the next weekend, he did it again. He tweeted again.
Like 2 days after, not
Or something
even
like
next
that. Yeah,
week.
like 2 days after or something like that. He goes ahead and he tweets again, and we look at it and we're like, meh, that's not going to do anything. And it freaking skyrockets. And we're like, what the hell? What did happen the first time? like we had the right idea of what was going to happen, but for some reason it didn't. It's like if we're investing, the universe says, no, no, sorry.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
She's pretty good. Oh, let's see here. Chris00NJ, the one who said that I'm out of my league, he wrote, yes, New Jersey, now Texas. Here's some rubles. Thank you. Just got done reading Gulag Archipelago. Oh, yeah, I actually have Gulag Archipelago on the bookshelf, but I haven't read it yet. I would like to. I bought an old copy, so it's like all neat. No one wants to be a slave. Pick another subject to be devil's advocate. Chris, I don't think that's true. I think that if you have a system historically where people are starving to death, but they could choose instead to be slaves, right? But the slave masters are good people. Gulag Archipelago, you're talking about the worst possible, the worst imaginable, treating people in a way that's inhumane. Right? I don't know if that's always been true in every civilization, always when anyone had a slave, right? I mean, the Bible talks about slavery quite a bit, and it talks about how you need to treat your slaves well, because at the time when the Bible was written, slavery was sort of like a common thing. People had slaves commonly. And so it was like, you have to treat your animals well, you have to treat your slaves well, and if you're, another thing that's interesting in the times of the Romans, you should read up on how slaves were treated in Roman times, because if you mistreated your slave in Roman times, you could actually be punished. You could actually, I think, go to jail and stuff like that. Like there were certain rights that slaves even had, and they actually had certain hats that you could wear if you were a slave that was freed, which anyway, there's stuff about it. You should read up on the slavery of Roman times. Fascinating stuff. Caesar Augustus. Oh, speaking of Roman times, Caesar Augustus writes, "Keep it up, both of you." Thank you, Caesar. We shall try. All right. I mean, people are writing a lot of stuff. They've got some great stuff here. Jesus is God wrote, "I'm a slave to Christ." That's true. But let's see here. Look, I am playing devil's advocate. Of course, I think being a slave 99% of the time is, not an optimal situation. But I just think that an argument can be made that it's not the worst thing ever in history. I think in some cases it might have been, but not in every case. So let's just be a little bit more nuanced about history than just, this is evil and that's the end of the topic. All right, should we end it here?
I think so. 98 minutes. A
Let's
lie.
see here. Caesar Augustus wrote, I got into Bitcoin when it was at 40K, only had 1K to spend, but I'm up 300 for now. Good job, Caesar. This guy knows what's up. And we actually did something quite risky. I probably shouldn't say this on the air, but we actually took out a lot of our savings from stock investments to invest in crypto, which may have been a horrible mistake.
The problem with stock investments right now that because they're printing a lot of dollars,
You think that the power of the
and
dollar
as power of dollar goes down, crypto will go up, especially tomorrow because Biden signs the stimulus package.
Yeah, Valeria thinks if
Crypto
you're
will
going to get
go
into crypto, get in tonight. Before,
Even it's already late because it's already going
just
up.
put in $100, just put in $1,000. You can buy crypto on Robinhood. It's the easiest way, I think.
It's easy,
But it
yeah.
costs you a fee. There's a fee.
No,
Oh, no fee? No fee?
I mean if you like, you can Google the cheapest ways to trade
You can
crypto.
Google the cheapest ways
I
to
think it's like the
trade.
first one will be like Binance.
We use Binance. Yeah, that's
We
what
do.
Valeria
It's like the
uses.
like
Yeah.
lowest fee, I think.
But
oh, we
there's
got
various
another
places.
questions, Chris.
Oh my gosh,
Chris-
Frank James writes,
Chris.
slavery in an American context is evil. In other contexts, indentured servitude. When you talk slavery, people hear the American context. Well, this is what I'm trying to say. So Frank James is from Canada. To me, that's a much more balanced view to have. And I tried to make that distinction when I was talking about it earlier. I don't think anyone would say that the slavery is the ideal situation for people.
Oh, I'm
but
correct. Thank you, guys.
what's that? What do we got?
Somebody said
Valeria
I'm correct.
is correct, says Demon Slayer.
She's your
the power of the-
financial manager. I think I actually spent more his money than I saved, but
You mean lost more money of mine?
no, spend. No, I didn't lost.
Oh,
too
you
much.
mean spend more of my money on
Yeah.
like clothes and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny? Okay, so for maybe I don't know, like a couple of years, Valeria has been a little bit depressed about one thing, which is that she couldn't find a job that she found fulfilling. And this is something that is part of human nature, right? We don't have any children, and she doesn't have a job that she felt was fulfilling. She had a job that she likes. She likes
fun.
in
It's
Hollywood.
a fun job. It's a fun job.
But it's not a job she felt was something that was contributing enough to our family or the world, and so she wanted to do something else. And so I came up with two jobs for her. This, which I think she's great at. You guys can say one way or another what you think about that. But I think she's a bit of a star. And then I also came up with this idea of investing in crypto. And the thing is, I wanted to do it, right? I wanted to go in and start investing in crypto and do all the research and all that. I just didn't have the time to do it because my show just takes so much research, so much editing, so much time to write the scripts and everything. So I knew I couldn't do it myself. And so what I did is I did a little research and I kind of got the basics down and I kind of walked Valeria through it. And at first she didn't think she would be able to do it. She said, no, I don't want to do this. And now she is a frickin' guru. She's like a crypto genius. She watches like 20 videos a day in Russian on how to invest in crypto. And she knows her stuff. She knows way better than I do. In fact, every couple of days I come up to her and I go, hey, how is the crypto doing? Are we making money? Are we losing money? She's like, oh, it's up right now. I'm like, okay, cool. Are you going to pull out? And she just looks at me like, do not ask me these questions. I will do it, and you will shut up, and you will wait, and you will see, and you will just get the money. Do not ask me. I will do it. You will, and I always go, okay. She doesn't like to talk about it. She just likes to do it, and that's the way I am.
That's why I'm not talking, because less talking, more.
That's the
more
way
action.
I say that all the time about bedroom things. I don't like to talk about it, guys. All right. Just like to do it. Sorry. That took a very vulgar turn all of a sudden. but I thought it was funny.
And you were blaming me for pronouncing Anon?
Yeah. Yeah, blue and on incorrectly. Yeah, true. All right, well, this one went really long. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you for sticking with us for the entire 16 hours, however long this was. And we will see you guys tomorrow. And tomorrow I'll try to keep it to an hour.
I will force him
Yeah.
to
All right.
keep it an hour.
All right. Well, Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.